Hey guys, it's Crossroads here. Today I wanted to talk to you about Nubank, ticker symbol NEW, and its stock and why I'm buying more or plan to anyway very soon before this happens. Well, what is this? We'll start there right quick. They, of course, had earnings, and we'll talk about that, some of the key things that I'm looking for and just in awe of. But there's a lot of headlines if you just search for Brazil news, and a lot of it's just not great. There's a lot of geopolitical risk with this one. It's just kind of a known thing to trade on stocks that are outside the United States, like Nubank. And we can see you can click on any of these. I'm not going to go into the detail, but even like GDP, it's not great. Now, this is not abnormal for Brazil. They go through periodic recessions like any developing and emerging country. There's an element certainly of corruption as well. And there's a bit of a tiff between the leaders of Brazil and Donald Trump as well regarding tariffs. So we'll have to see how that shakes out. That said, that's the reason I believe why Nubank, or at least part of the reason why Nubank is trading at where it's at. Part of it, of course, was some concern with the actual company itself, and which is largely positioned in Brazil. So why am I looking to buy more in this one? I think that the strength of their earnings over the last couple of quarters actually illustrates this. Now, I know the previous quarter, they had tremendous headwinds. This is quarter one, just because of the Brazilian real to the United States dollars, which is closer to parity, at least over the last year, rather than just at an all-time low as what it was when they reported in quarter one. So they had some nice numbers. The stock is up a good bit, but it's still down substantially from where it's been before. So my simple thesis is this, that we can actually see, we'll start here, that they have a breakdown on a lot of their different revenue that you can see. And this, by the way, orange is Brazil revenue. So yes, they are a Brazilian company. They own a huge amount in Brazil as well. Purple here is Mexico, Colombia, which they don't always break down the revenue, always doing the 10K. I'm not sure why it's not showing here. I think it was in the SEC filing, but double check. Regardless, they're in these three countries, and you can see they have a little income from a few different things, like in the United States. But really, they're just in three countries for right now. But they will and are going to expand in a number of places. So how is that expansion going? I want to highlight to you this first real slide once you get into the earnings call. This is impressive. Sustained growth of one of the world's largest digital banking platforms. It is already one of the larger banks out there globally in terms of market cap. It does trade as a premium because of the growth that they're able to get, but also because of this. Percent of the adult population in Brazil that are customers of theirs is 60% in Brazil, which I believe that their goal was maybe 5 or 10% of the population when they started out, and they have just dominated that market. Mexico, they're already up to 13%, and Colombia, 9% as well. The CAGR there doesn't really matter as much, but this is really impressive growth. Now, before we look at the Mexico stuff, actually, I want to show you something from the previous quarter. This is from quarter one, and I think so maybe next quarter they'll update us on Colombia and show what that's looking like, although it's their smallest segment. And they reiterated this, that despite having that 60% of the adult population, there is a lot of TAM and a lot of upside left in Brazil alone. They say the gross profit market share is 5%. You can see in some of these areas, they have a strong position in credit cards, certainly. They're doing okay in personal loans, very small in retail deposits. And a lot of these others are just tiny, tiny pieces of the pie. They continue to, by the way, roll out a lot of stuff, and including, this is again from last quarter, Mexico, they said a massive opportunity in its infancy. And this is really what got me very excited. You can see that there's a lot of products that they've not even launched yet in Mexico, some that they've launched as well, and everything that they broke down in the comments, in the earnings card, in the slide deck as well is going very well. Net interest income performance is up a little bit, which is always something that's really good to see. And we also see delinquency ratios. They only break these out for Brazil specifically because that's where they have their personal loans. This was actually a really nice read to see that actually down. Now there is some seasonality that helps favor that, but that's also with a 90 plus non-performing loans, which is up just slightly, but no big concerns there. Their margin is moving in the right direction as well. They talked about working on these local depositories, which actually help increase their net interest income as a result. And there's actually a couple of things that they indicated actually very well, I think, in this quarter. The market didn't like this number right here very much, but their comments were not necessarily saying that that was going to be the bottom and the inflection point, but that it certainly could be and that it was close. And yeah, we can see that they crushed it here this quarter. Now, as far as what's happening in Mexico, this really is the linchpin for this strategy. So they made the leap from just purely basically being focused on Brazil to Mexico and Colombia right there during COVID, basically. So maybe not the perfect time to launch things, but of course they launched their new bank in Brazil during a recession. So they are strong enough and positioned well enough that it doesn't matter what environment they launch in, they're going to be fine. It might slow them down a little bit, but this is not going to stop them at all. And we can see this, the strong customer growth that they've seen. Percent of the adult population went from just last year, 8% of the population to 13% of the adult population in Mexico. Now, you might say, well, Roy, this is slower growth than the 4% to 8% jump that you see in 2024. Yes. That is absolutely true, but a lot of the bank's population in Mexico, or a lot of the more tech-savvy people in Mexico, likely are already a part and membership of Mexico, of Nubank in Mexico. And so, what this is basically showing is that they're able to reach, just as they did in Brazil, just as they're starting to do in Colombia as well, this massively unbanked and underbanked population that's within Mexico as well. There's a massive opportunity here. And the neat thing is, if they win in Mexico, which I think that this shows that they clearly are, this was a little bit too early back in quarter 2, 2023. Even last year, it's still a little bit early because, again, you're just hitting those more affluent people that are already very tech savvy, that understand and have banks, and maybe they're not going to choose you for their first initial bank position. But this is showing just substantial sustainable growth as well. They're building out their deposit franchises. It shows Mexico specifically. And so these deposits, which are the lifeblood of Nubank, and are moving them from basically burning cash in Mexico to actually generating a lot of net interest income, is exciting. The engagement engine is, as they call, activated. They're mastering credit. And again, there's a lot of products that they've not even begun to launch at all. So why am I so excited on Mexico specifically? Well, it's essentially the hub of Latin America. You have a lot of goods, you have a lot of services, you have a lot of people as well moving in and out of that country. It is a regional hub, and it's been seen as that. And it's frankly, it's the most important country, maybe outside of Brazil, or you can even say even above Brazil, in Latin America. Brazil, of course, speaks Portuguese, but to jump over to Mexico, and a Spanish-speaking country, do well, not have any issues as far as culture, means that they will probably be able to reach all of Latin America, and not just all of Latin America either. I don't think that they'll stop there. It sounds like that they are open to the idea of expanding in the United States at some point. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to compete head-to-head with JP Morgan Chase and SoFi and all of that. But what it does mean is that they have a very easy vertical to be able to capture a lot of the people that are coming up from Latin America to the United States, whether legally or illegally, or already here, capture a lot of that remittances, and just have a banking system that just works for the people that are already here in the United States. So a lot of the banks, especially regional banks, just don't have the translation services like you'd want to have if your first and primary language is Spanish. Even if you're fluent in English, it's not the same thing as it being in your heart language. So with Nubank showing and showcasing that they have a lot of meat on the bone still in Brazil, of course in Colombia, but that they are really able to reach Mexico effectively, efficiently, that their roadmap, their plan is working very well. In fact, they're ahead of schedule. That shows to me that there's tremendous strength and tremendous upside here. Now, where else might they go beyond Latin America and a little bit in the United States? And that's going to be Africa. I want you to take a look at this. So this is a map of Africa, and what red illustrates are places where the national language is Portuguese. There was a lot of Portuguese colonies here back in the day. There's some French ones as well. Just one place, Equatorial Guinea, actually, that speaks Spanish as far as its official language. But these are natural places to expand to. Now, I don't think all these countries are created equal in Africa as far as an opportunity for new banks. Some have a better banked and banking population than others, but Africa is ripe for expansion. And I think that there's a lot of opportunities there as well. And I think that Nubank, since they're showing that their model is working cross-culturally, cross-language, reaching underbanked and unbanked populations as well, they're going to do big things in Africa too, in addition to, of course, the United States. Although Argentina is probably the next thing on their list, just based on their filings for a banking regulatory license there in Argentina. Now, let's take a look one more time at this revenue, because I want to show you without Brazil revenue, what this really looks like. Now we can see this is on quarterly basis. There is some seasonality with Q4, by the way, so don't read too much here. I believe that there was a one-off as well that contributed to that. But this is just showing the ramp of revenue that's happening there in Mexico versus in Brazil. And so we see that this is a phenomenal growth rate from where they were in Q2 to Q3 right now, from 125 million to 175 million as well. Now they do tout the CAGR, the compound annual growth rate, going back to 2020. I think that's a little bit disingenuous just because they were so small here. But looking at these year-over-year comps, they are growing very, very fast. Anytime you can grow that fast, it is amazing. Anytime you can grow 40% year over year in any segment, when it's not really, really tiny, is just amazing. I think that they're going to see actually continued growth. This will actually compound in the 40% range for a long time for Mexico, and likely for Colombia as well, though these are smaller numbers and not growing quite as rapidly here as well. There's a little bit more competition in that space. So that's certainly something to keep an eye on. You can see a breakdown of a lot of their revenue segments as well. But that's basically the thesis right there, is that their weak points they've improved on. They have a very clear understanding of this roadmap. They're reaching Mexico. They're accelerating in Mexico, in Colombia to a lesser extent as well. Still a lot of opportunity in Brazil. And frankly, I don't see that there's any stopping them. Now, the last little piece as far as Nubank, these are not easy markets to go into. And this, the more difficult it is to really get started as a business, means frankly that you're probably not going to make it and you're going to go out of business. But if you manage to make it work and not just survive, but thrive, what that means is that those coming up behind you that are trying to enter into your space, your territory, they're going to have a really tough time just because it's a very difficult environment. And so in the past in Latin America, we've seen Citibank, we've seen Bank of America, we've seen American Express, we've seen Wachovia, which Wells Fargo bought out, all make plays for Latin America. Many, many others as well, by the way, and fell ultimately. Now, some of these failures were not nearly as bad as others. It was them saying, hey, this is not really that profitable. We can't really make this work. And so they ended up selling their business to other local competitors. But a lot of the competition that you usually see from the United States going into emerging markets, it frankly is not going to happen, just because these are very difficult, very challenging environments for U.S. banks to be able to operate in, and not so much for Nubank as well. And so this just showcases how excellent this business is, how strong that moat really is, and that I think this is going to continue for quite some time. So is Nubank going to be the fastest grower as far as a stock in my portfolio? Absolutely not. But what I really want to make sure that I do is, before those headlines that we looked at the very beginning are resolved, the tariff stuff is resolved, a lot of the geopolitical stuff, for a little while, it starts taming down. I want to make sure that I get the size of position for Nubank that I want to have, because frankly, right now it's trading under a 1 forward peg. And there's a lot of growth here that I think is underrepresented even in that figure. So that's where I'm at with Nubank. Great earnings. I think that the stock price is still very undervalued. It's underperformed as well, but these deals don't always last. And so that's why I'm looking to buy more and wearing Nubank purple for this video. Anyway, thank you guys for watching, commenting, and subscribing. And until next time, happy investing.